Hi, welcome to a Sunny Book Nook. Today I'm going to be giving you a bunch of romance recommendations. Well, not a bunch, 5 of the top romances that I have read this year so far. Most of these are going to be genre fiction romances, and they're all going to be queer. So let's just get into my little list. Not going in any particular order. Well, actually, going in the order that I read them, most likely. So the first romance that I read this year that I absolutely loved, it might have been my first read of the year actually, I really don't remember, is The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane. And I know I'm kind of late to the game in talking about this book probably, but I really enjoyed it, and I thought that it was such a sweet rom-com type story, and I think that the capacity that it has to live in your brain after you finish reading it is very real, because the dominance of reality TV dating shows in pop culture and media is really inescapable, and this book really capitalizes on that. It's about this guy who goes on The Bachelor, The Bachelorette. Girl, I don't watch reality TV. I don't know how the fuck this shit works, but it's about this guy who goes onto a show in order to sort of reclaim or readjust his public image, because I think his name is Alex. I'm really bad at remembering character names, as you know, if you've been watching my channel for a bit. But anyways, this guy was the CTO or something like that of this up and coming tech company essentially, and he essentially had like a nervous breakdown that caused him to lose face in the public eye essentially, and he wants to reform his image. His PR lady, who also happens to be his best and only friend, recommends him to go on this show that is it's like basically it's about like the Prince Charming, and it's all these different women are trying to date this guy, and whoever works best together of the women with this guy, the contestant, like win essentially. And obviously one of our main characters in the love interest is that guy. But the other love interest is this guy who is one of the set producer assistant type people working on the show. This TV producer guy is who's working on the show is South Asian, and he worked really hard to like break into the industry, and this is his dream job. Like, he's wanted to work in television, specifically like romance dating reality TV, since he was a kid. So this is like his dream come true. And essentially, he is very used to working with the women contestants, like the women who are coming on the show. He's usually the one who like is their handler essentially, and like talking to them and helping them work through things. But because everyone knows that this new Prince Charming guy is kind of a bit of an awkward mess, who, like, to everyone else seems just aloof and cold and somewhat clumsy, he gets assigned to him as like a special case, like, you should really help him because dude, he really needs the help. And basically those two fall in love with each other, because, you know, it's like the TV producer and the TV contestant, like, it's a cute little romance. I'm sure you've already heard of this book. Like, I feel like it's been unavoidable, but I just wanted to add my 2 cents into the discourse and say that I really loved it. I thought it was a super cute romance with characters that had to, you know, navigate the practicalities of like being on a TV set and doing a reality TV show, and all the other like characters and moving parts as a part of that, and the side characters. They were all super fun and quirky, I feel. And I thought that the romance itself was super adorable and pretty well built out, with characters that are still memorable now. One of them, the producer guy who's working on the show, is out as gay, and the other guy, the contestant, the Prince Charming, he is not. He's presumed straight because he's on this show where he has to pick a girl to like be his girlfriend or wife or whatever the fuck. But yeah, I mean, it's a really cute romance that involves like a coming out thing that's incredibly high stakes, because it's obviously being streamed to like millions of viewers. And I thought that the way that those stakes were integrated into the relationship was really fun and I really enjoyed it. So I definitely would recommend it, and I would definitely call it one of my favorite romances that I've read this year, and maybe of all time, in terms of like male genre contemporary romances, I guess. The next romance I want to talk about is The Perks of Loving a Wallflower by Erica Ridley. This is a Regency historical female-female romance. The cover is not really representative of the characters whatsoever, because one of the characters is this androgynous, dapper, butch-esque brunette scammer type, and then the other is this really curvy blonde. So the models are really not giving that, but alas, the story follows the curvy blonde, who is this daughter of these like sort of nouveau riche type noblemen people. Like her parents have just been integrated into the aristocracy, and in order to be further integrated into it, her mother is very pushy and her dad is the pushover type, and her mom is like, you need to marry like a titled dude so that your dad can get a better seat in the House of the Lords or whatever the fuck, I don't know. And it has to do with like parliamentary politics, early 19th century shit, I think. And our main character, this girl, is like, okay, fine, I'll like go out on dates with whoever you want me to, because I'm like in my 30s now and I'm not yet married. Whoa, big fucking deal. And so she has to do that. The other character, our androgynous scammer slay, she is a sort of, I think like orphan or something like that, but she comes from a very low class background, but now has taken on, not a fake identity, but she's like in this group of like ragtag, all thieves and scammers type, like makeshift found family type group, and part of her thing is like just making and wearing disguises and pretending to be different people, and that's how she gets her way through like high society and shit, by also being able to cosplay as like a servant girl when necessary, or a page boy when necessary, or a nobleman. And essentially she goes undercover as a nobleman and ends up fake dating our curvy blonde character, because our dapper scammer has been, again, I do not remember character names, our dapper scammer has been nursing a crush on Miss Blondie for a year now, and so her found family is all like nudge nudge, wink wink, like go get her. But obviously our Miss Blonde girl, her head's in the clouds a bit. She's involved in this sort of like reading club or knitting club of women, and they're sort of all, they're like low-key feminists, you know, and they're like the Regency ladies who are trying to just talk shit essentially. And because Blondie's mom is super controlling of her, that's like the only time she's allowed to go out with her girls, and all her other outings have to be with like men that she's courting or whatever the fuck. She ends up courting the guy that the love interest is pretending to be. Then obviously there's like that sort of fake identity scheme going on. But also, Scammer is playing one of the old ladies in the reading group, and it's just really fun. A lot of hijinks are gotten up to. There's a bit of a feminist twist at the end, or not at the end, but throughout, because one of her friends in the reading group actually helped find this scientific discovery, but her asshole husband took it in her name. Or not scientific discovery, like a code-breaking thing that helps something war, whatever. And yeah, I really, really liked it. I thought it was really sweet and wholesome and funny, but the romance was pretty high stakes, obviously, and the reveals were really fun, and our characters and their issues internally and with their families and stuff within this Regency historical romance setting were, it's just on point. Like, this is exactly what I want from a Regency romance, and of course I only read queer ones, male or female ones. There just seems to be a lot more of male historical Regency romances, a la KJ Charles and like Olivia Waithe and the like. I think Olivia Waithe's written a couple female historical Regency romances, but I would like to see more. Erica Ridley, please, can we get more books like this? Because I really liked it. I thought it was super adorable. Next, we have Delilah Green is Not Okay, is Totally Okay. Delilah Green is, girl, you can see the cover. Anyway, again, with the proper nouns and shit. This book is by Ashley Herring Blake, who I have some beef with a little bit because she doesn't really use the word lesbian in her books, despite most of them being sapphic, which I find frustrating, but anyways. And Delilah Green doesn't care. Our two main characters are Delilah Green, this photographer who like ran away from her small town to go move to New York City and be the queer woman artist of her dreams because her father, I think, died when she was basically one of her parents died or something like that. They got remarried into another family, and that family who took her in when she was like in high school or middle school made her feel like she was a bit of a burden essentially, and so her stepsister is getting married and Delilah gets called in from New York to be the wedding photographer. When Delilah comes in, she sees this girl who's like really pretty, and she remembers her to be one of the friends of her stepsister from high school who kind of made her feel isolated and out of the loop, which is why she like ran out of town as soon as she turned 18 essentially. But that girl does not recognize Delilah. It's a contemporary romance where we're sort of alternating perspectives. It's set in that small town vibe. It's pretty cute. The love interest who is the local and not the photographer, not Delilah. Again, don't remember her name. She does not recognize Delilah at first, and it causes like an issue because she hasn't like slept with anyone in like a year, and all her friends are egging her on because she is a single mom. She like got pregnant pretty young and has an amicable relationship with the father, but like not really. It's very like Gilmore Girls coded, I would say. And her daughter is like 12 years old. And I think the representation of like the kid was questionable, I would say. But regardless, we got single mom and then we got hot photographer, and then they have to navigate around the fact that obviously single mom's best friend is getting married, but the best friend who's getting married is the awkward, weird relationship stepsister of Delilah, single mom's love interest. So there's complications there that they have to navigate. And it's an interesting situation all around, considering the fact that the stepsister's mom, the stepmom of Delilah, is a total fucking asshole. And also, the guy that the bride is getting married to is also a total fucking asshole. So there's a lot of moving parts here, a lot of side characters. Contemporary romances and romances in general love to do this, right? A big cast of characters that help complicate our main characters' like relationship to each other. But I still thought that it was really sweet, really fun. One of the only good, somewhat smutty contemporary female-female romances that I've read ever, I would say. I liked it. I would recommend it if you are looking for a cute little romance. And of course it's centered around a wedding, not of the two characters, of course, and there's some drama going on that has to do with like family and figuring out yourself and shit like that, right? Your typical rom-com bullshit, right? My fourth book on this list is another Regency romance, and this one is Reputation by Lex Croucher. The main romance in this story is a male-female romance, so there's that. But it is very like Mr. Darcy, Elizabeth Bennet coded, I would say. And the side characters are all like very queer, because essentially our main character is this book nerd who gets sent to go live with her aunt and like to get integrated into society or whatever the fuck. And as she does, she kind of stumbles into the essentially mean girl clique of high society, and this mean girl clique takes her in. The main girl who runs this shit, like, you know, brings her into the group, and it's a fun time all around, except it's not, because there's beef, there's drama, there's male entitlement, sexual harassment bullshit that gets overlooked. There's the fact that the main girl who runs this shit is getting strung along by some asshole dude, but she also has a side relationship with one of the other girls in the group. One girl in the group really doesn't like her. Some of the others are nice to her, but it's like that petty clique dynamic of like young adults, right? This group of people who take her in are like the hottest bitches on the Regency scene, and so our main character feels really, you know, like, I don't know how to deal with this, but I also have to act cool about it and like take it in stride. And shit goes south, but in a very fun and interesting way, because she ends up falling for the dark, brooding, silent, mysterious guy who no one really knows much about. And their relationship and how they just like run into each other at different parties and events and stuff is really fun. And I think like it's intriguing enough. The dark, brooding boy thing doesn't lean into the abusive asshole situation and more of like someone who has deep trauma and is dealing with it in a particular way that doesn't like do violence unto others, but that makes him, this character, be perceived as like weird and a loner and an outsider to the other people in their scene, particularly because his younger brother, who I think had died within like the past 3 years, was like a huge party boy. There's a lot of like relationship family drama and then of course social dynamic drama going on here, because our main character also feels really neglected by her parents, who essentially shoot her off their estate and said, go away, we don't really care about you, up until the point she gets into trouble, right? And so our main character, I felt, was really cool, but also like way in over her head. She was pretty smart and like collected, and she tried to lean into those things, but obviously she was shaken by these various circumstances that she found herself in, and it was interesting to see her try to navigate that, especially when trying to balance the social situation that she was in with like this mean girl clique and the guy that she's into, who this mean girl clique kind of have beef with, and that he kind of has beef with them for being such partiers. And yeah, I really liked it. I think that the feminist narrative within it wasn't too heavy-handed or anything like that. Honestly, all of these romances, especially and particularly the Regency ones, sort of address the issues of, you know, being set in like the 19th century England or whatever, the issues surrounding gender and race and class and all of these things in an interesting way that makes sense for a romance novel and like the rom-com type beat that it's trying to fill. So yeah, I really enjoyed Reputation. It was such a delight to get through, and the audiobook was really sweet, so I would definitely recommend that if you want to get to it. And it's probably the only like male-female romance I'll read this year that I will thoroughly enjoy. Unless something comes along in the future and I'm like, shut the fuck up, never mind. But I don't know if that's gonna happen, so. Also, like, the queer side characters and the plot lines with that are really integral to the nature of the group dynamic, which obviously is very important to the plotline of the story, which is why I would still categorize it under the queer romance recommendation, like, video title of this list, I would say. But anyways, the last fifth final book I want to talk about here is Like a House on Fire by Lauren McBride. This one you could say leans more into literary fiction than like romance genre fiction, but I still think that the romance is so central to the story that I would still categorize it as a romance somewhat. Essentially, we are following this woman who has pretty advanced degrees in art and art history and shit, and she's been married to her husband, who's a tech guy, and they live in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and she has two younger children, two small kids, and she's basically not very happy with her life. She knows that her husband views her as like less sexually and romantically desirable because of the fact that she's not like a working mom. She had specifically taken the time off from work in order to have more time with her kids, but now she's trying to re-enter the workplace in order to spend less time with them. And so there's the through line of the fact that like this is thematically relevant, and I feel like in a lot of books about working moms or about motherhood in general, like I'm thinking like Night Bitch and the like, books like that that comment on the nature of gender divisions of labor within the household and the domestic task like allocation, and how it gives so much more of a burden towards women and wives and mothers, essentially. But anyways, we're following this woman who decides to enter back into the workforce and tries to join this architectural firm. The love interest is her boss, who is much older than her and very collected and beautiful and put together and brutal and efficient, and that's why she's at the top of her field, especially in like architecture, which is like a lot of other prestigious like fields, very male dominated. Essentially, over the course of their working relationship, they become best friends, and then eventually start, you know, having deeper feelings for each other. And the way that it all plays out is so phenomenal because they're both obviously like married, and the older woman doesn't have any kids, but like they both are hardworking, very talented, high earning career women. It's really interesting to see that workplace dynamic and the home dynamic and all these things be shaped and worked into their relationship with each other, which is obviously really complicated. And it's further complicated by the fact that our main character, the one who we are in the perspective of, like obviously cares so much about her children and loves her husband. So she is really, unsure of where this is going, especially with the fact that she has never questioned her sexuality up until this point, and she's like in her mid to late 30s now, right? And our other character, her younger brother, was gay and I think died of HIV/AIDS, and so she feels weird or has a hesitancy towards taking on a label under like the queer identity marker, I guess, because she, has lasting trauma from her brother's death. It was just so interesting to see like these older women who, aren't just coming of age, like are established in their careers and lives, try to come to terms with their attraction to each other and their relationship with each other, and the secret affair that turns into something more, and how we get to that point of having like a secret affair, of their best friendship and how intimate it is. So yeah, I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful love story, and definitely I think more of a romance than say like Yerba Buena, I guess, because Yerba Buena, which was a book that is one of my favorites of the year so far, and I talk about it in this video. In that book, our two main characters, our two women, do not meet until like halfway through. In this book, within the first chapter, they meet and immediately have a lot of chemistry, right? She gets hired, she's getting interviewed, and then she gets hired. She immediately admires this woman so much for her brilliance and her beauty, and then it escalates from there and just continues escalating. And I love the way that like architecture and design was talked about in this as well. It didn't feel like a romance that sort of tries to incorporate non-romance and like career elements into the story for the sake of having something else that isn't the romance. It felt really neatly and necessarily incorporated into their relationship. Like it was foundational to their relationship with each other, because their relationship is one that is a working relationship. Like they're both doing architectural design and shit and working with clients. How many times did I just say working? Jesus Christ. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and it had me on the edge of my fucking seat. And just seeing the drama of these everyday people's lives, sort of, or not everyday, like upper middle class, like white people's lives, play out in a way that was like, whoa, romance. But yeah, those are all of the queer romances that I've read this year, that have been published all pretty recently, that I would definitely recommend. And if you have read any of these books, please let me know down in the comments below and let me know what you thought of them and whether you would also recommend them. Or if you haven't, let me know what books you would want to pick up from this list, if you would. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I really appreciate you being here. I have a Patreon. I always have that link down below, as well as all of my other social medias where you can find me on. But that's all I have for you today. So thanks so much for watching once again, and I'll see you in my next video, hopefully. Bye.